TV1, TV for life.
The President made a startling revelation in Parliament today, saying that the date set for the election is not legal. But what is the real story behind this? Good evening and welcome. This is Prime Time News on TV1. We've got details of these stories and much more coming up for you here tonight. First, a look at your top stories.
Student activists storm into the Education Ministry, demanding the reopening of the Buddhist in Pali University. IUSF's Vasanta Mudalige arrested again for storming into the Education Ministry. Election Commission has not legally called for an election and there are no funds to conduct an election, President tells Parliament. Local government election was called for with the consent of all members and was done legally, says Chairman of the Election Commission. Petition against the local government election postponed to the 11th of May. Opposition protests in Parliament calling for an election. Harsha overlooked. Mayantha appointed as chairman of the Committee on Public Finance.
Onto those stories in detail now. 57 people, including student monks from the Buddhist in Pali University of Sri Lanka, were arrested by police on Thursday for storming into the Education Ministry. Sri Lanka police said that among the arrested was the convener of the Inter-University Students' Federation, Vasanta Mudalige.
Student activists and student monks from the Buddhist and Pali University of Sri Lanka entered the Education Ministry on Thursday afternoon. Thereafter, they engaged in a protest inside the Education Ministry premises. Sri Lanka police and the riot police entered the Education Ministry premises shortly after the protest started. Thereafter, measures were taken to remove the protesting university students and student monks. Sri Lanka police thereafter made a series of arrests, including 48 student monks and 9 students. Police said that among the arrested was convener of the Inter-University Students' Federation, Vasanta Mudalige. This is how the protesters vacated the Education Ministry premises. The Education Ministry in a statement said student monks and activists forced their way into the Education Ministry premises without any prior notification and created chaos. It noted that the administrative body of the Buddhist in Pali University of Sri Lanka will be reopening the premises in phases from the 27th of February. The Education Ministry said because the group forced their way into the Education Ministry premises without any prior notification and created chaos, Sri Lanka police entered the premises to act as per the law.
Sri Lankan President Ranil Wickremesinghe emphasized in Parliament on Thursday that so far no official date has been declared for the local government election. He said that the currently announced date, claiming to be the date of the election, is not legal.
There is no legal date for the election. Some speak of the 9th of March. I cannot speak on that. As far as I am aware, there is no legal decision to hold the election.
The quorum for any meeting of the commission shall be 3 members.
This is what was reported on the Sunday Times on the 22nd.
Chairman of the Election Commission, Nimal Puncheva, told the Sunday Times last night that the 3 commissioners were contacted virtually by Zoom and their consent obtained. 5th Commissioner M.M. Mohammed was present at the commission office.
That means the decision was reached by the chairman and M.M. Mohammed. He himself says that thereafter they spoke to the rest and obtained their consent. The decision was made by these 2 individuals. If you inquire from the other 3 members, they do not maintain this position. I will provide you with the evidence. So no official decision has been taken to hold the election. Right now we don't have the funds. We have no intention of delaying or suspending anything. If the process should go ahead, everyone must discuss it. We can find a solution for this. Right now we have no funds. There is no election as well. There are no funds for an election. There is no election even if there are funds. What can we do? Why are you yelling?
President Wickremesinghe also noted that the Election Commission must be summoned to a Parliament's election committee for an inquiry and proposed by a group of MPs.
The commission is accountable to the Parliament. There was a proposal to appoint a select committee in Parliament, appoint it and report everything to the Supreme Court. We have the power over the finances. These MPs want the election delayed. The opposition MPs do not want the election. I got the messages. All of you want the election to be delayed. All of you said you will make some noise and then be silent. Did you not say that? Didn't the JVP want the election delayed? Why are you holding on to this? It is shameful. Everyone holding on to this wanted the election postponed. No one has postponed the election and the commission has not given a date for the election.
මේක අල්ලගෙන ඉන්න හැම එක්කෙනාම ඡන්දේ කල් දාන්න කිව්වා. කවුරුත් ඡන්දේ කල් දාලා නැහැ. තාම කොමිසමෙන් ඡන්දේ තියන්න දිලියක් දාලා නැහැ. අය බෑ බිලියන 10ක් මෙක් ගලලා තියෙනවා.
10 billion rupees was allocated from the budget. Why are you not proving that amount? However, what has happened is that the constitution has been cast aside and a circular was issued not to work for credit. The finance minister issued a statement on essential expenditure and it does not include election expenses. Can a finance ministry circular do away with the articles in the constitution?
We can spend if we can generate the revenue as expected. We need to ask this house, are we going to tell the central bank to print more money? As per the IMF agreement, we cannot print more money.
We have been working with you since 1999. This is good screenplay. The drama is going well with the actors.
I know parliamentarian Marikar wishes to speak. You must speak up and even engage in a satyagraha. There is no issue.
අපි එක තීරණයක් ගත්තා IMF එකේ just wait a minute I just sit down no sit down I am talking to you man you sit down man I brought you into politics shut up and sit down මේ එකක් කියන්නම් ජන මේ කාලේ නාස්ති කරන්න බෑ කියලා මේගොල්ලෝ මමයි මේගොල්ලෝ ගෙනාවේ මගේ මොලේ ඕක ගෙනිච්චේ ඉතින් දැන් දැනගන්න ඔයගොල්ලෝ මොලේ නෑ මේ කියන දේ කරන්න කියලා හරි
You must proceed with this process even by appointing a new commission. It appears that the UNP Working Committee of 2012 is back with you.
UNP Working Committee UNP Working Committee
ගරු ජනාධිපතිතුමනි මම මීට කලින්ුත් මේ සභාවේ කියලා තියෙනවා ඔබතුමා අර අපිරාජ ඉබ්බකේ ඉන්න අර මොලකරු කියලා අපිට පැහැදිලි
I have noticed before in this house that you are like the mastermind in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It is clear that you have a big brain. If this situation continues, will you not have the presidential election or the parliamentary election or even provincial council elections? You play by the book and per the conditions by the IMF. There is instability in the country.
මේ රටේ ව්‍යවස්ථාව
If we look at the constitution, there are two important matters. The franchise shall be exercisable at the election of the President of the Republic and of the members of Parliament, and at every referendum by every citizen being qualified to be an elector, as hereinafter provided, has his name entered in the registry of electors. We must protect all the votes. We will conduct the election on time.
අපි පවත්වන්නට යනවා.
I second the proposal made by parliamentarian Dayasiri Jayasekara to reappoint the election commission. Ranil Wickremesinghe, who spoke highly of democracy, is acting like Hitler. Do not try to prevent parliamentary democracy. Grant the election.
Opposition MPs moved to the well in the house and engaged in a protest, and thereafter the president exited the chambers.
Despite the demand for an election here, if the chairman of the election commission is not performing his legal and constitutional duties, there is no way of holding the election. So instead of shouting here, go before the election commission and demand for an election. Then the election commission will hold the election legally.
ජනාධිපතිතුමා මෙතෙන්ට ඇවිල්ලා ආටක නාට්‍ය රංගපාලා අපි කෑ ගහනකොට පැනලා ගියා.
The president came here and put on a show and ran away when we started shouting. I tabled this picture in parliament. Ranil Wickremesinghe marched from Dondrahead when Chandrika was postponing the election. This same person is now saying that elections will not be held. How can he decide whether or not there will be an election? Is he the Commissioner General of Elections? He is also misusing parliament. He is calling members of the opposition fools. He is the fool. He is the one protecting the thieves. He couldn't even secure one seat in parliament. Do not allow him to misuse the parliament. Does he think he is the king? You must be knowing what happened to the people who acted like kings. We cannot let these people control the election commission. The Treasury Secretary, who is hiding behind the circulars, better prepare himself to serve 3 years in prison after the next government comes into power. He would also like to inform the government printer to prepare to go to jail if you plan on adhering to these illegal circulars. We will not allow him to do whatever he wants in this country. We only staged a satyagraha on the 20th. We will go across the country and collect 5 million signatures. We will file in motions at the Supreme Court. If the election is postponed, we will fight against it, and if this fight converts into a struggle, don't blame us for it.
මේ මැතිවරණ කල් තිබ්බොත් හන්දියක් ගානේ නැවත පටන් ගන්නවා. ඒක අරගලයකට පරිවර්තන වුණොත් අපිට දොස් කියන්න එපා කියන එක අපි කියනවා.
The petition filed by retired Sri Lanka Army Colonel W.M.R. Vijay Sundara seeking an order to invalidate the preparations being made for the local government election was postponed to the 11th of May for further consideration by the Supreme Court of Sri Lanka. The application was taken up in the presence of Supreme Court Justices S. Tureraja, A.H.M.D. Nawaz and Shiran Gunaratne on Thursday. President's Counsel Salia Pires, appearing for the National Election Commission, noted that no decision was reached to delay the election. He noted that there was no division among the members of the National Election Commission with regard to holding the election. However, he told court that there were obstacles in holding the election due to the Treasury not releasing funds for the election. The Treasury Secretary had provided an affidavit to the Supreme Court with regard to the matter, and he was represented by Additional Solicitor General Nerin Pulle in court on Thursday. Elaborating on the provisions of funds, the Additional Solicitor General noted that it is not possible to provide more funds as requested. When the court questioned when the funds can be provided, the Additional Solicitor General informed that advice should be sought to make such an announcement. President's counsel Salia Peiris, appearing for the National Election Commission, pointed out to the Supreme Court that the petition had failed to name important factions in the petition, including the political parties. The President's counsel noted that it is important to respond to the affidavit made by the Treasury Secretary and requested the court to take up the application again soon. President's counsel Romesh De Silva, appearing for Professor G.L. Peiris, requested the Supreme Court to summon the Treasury Secretary and the government printer for obstructing the election. However, as the consideration of the applications filed by Professor G.L. Peiris and other factions had already been concluded, the Supreme Court rejected the request. Following the consideration of facts submitted to court, the petition filed by retired Sri Lanka Army Colonel W.M.R. Vijayasundara was postponed to the 11th of May 2023. The undertaking the Election Commission made before the Supreme Court is still valid. Thereby, the Election Commission is bound by that undertaking to hold the election. There are 5 essential purposes mentioned in the circular. Spending money on anything outside those 5 purposes must only be done after obtaining personal approval from the Minister of Finance. The Minister of Finance is a politician affiliated to a party. His party is contesting the election. No election can be held in Sri Lanka without the personal approval of the Minister of Finance. There are no elections. Is that a democratic country? We saw the President speaking in Parliament without any legal basis. Nothing that he said was true. The election has been called legally. He said that he doesn't know that the date has been fixed for the 9th of March. That is a lie. Although he says that he is not getting involved in this election, he is doing all that he can to prevent the election from happening both inside and outside of Parliament. He is answerable to court as the finance minister. There is an undertaking to that effect, but he is speaking against the views of the court as well. I believe that we will have to solve this issue on the streets with Ranil Wickremesinghe. Sometimes he is cruel, sometimes he is a joker. He is laughing and talking about the suppression of the democratic rights of the people of this country.
Chairman of the National Election Commission, Attorney Nimal Punchaheva, said the local government election was called for legally as per the country's constitutions and the election law. He told Newsfirst on Thursday that all members of the National Election Commission consented to the local government election process. He said that given that funds were not being provided to continue with the election process, the National Election Commission will meet on Friday to reach a final decision on the local government election 2023. Convening a media briefing today, the SLPP said their stance is that the local government election should be held.
ජාතික සංවිධායකතුමා බැසිල් රාජපක්ෂ මහත්මයාගේ මතය මොකක්ද?
ශ්‍රී ලංකා පොදුජන පෙරමුණ ඒකමතිකව මේ මැතිවරණයට
The SLPP is ready for the election. That is the stance of the SLPP national organizer Basil Rajapaksa. There is no need to inquire from each person of the SLPP on what their stance is. It is very clear that the SLPP's stance is what we hope for the election even at this moment. Therefore, we are very actively engaged in this election campaign.
තවදුරටත් මේ මැතිවරණ ව්‍යාපාරය තුල නිරතව ඉන්නවා.
Opposition leader Sajid Premadasa responded to a statement made by the president during a public rally in Manipe.
දැන් අද ඇවිල්ලා පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ ජනාධිපතිවරයා පිස්සුවෙන් වගේ කතා කරේ.
The president came to parliament and spoke frantically. He said that there is no election. If there is no election, how did your party hand in nominations for the election? Why did your party hand in nominations? When the party that you lead is contesting for the election, how can you say that there is no election in the country? We would like to ask the president not to speak like a madman. Don't make foolish comments. The comedy show put on in parliament made it clear that the mastermind behind the conspiracy to postpone the election is none other than the president and the Pohottuwa government. To all politicians and officials who support the postponement of this election, I would like to say that the law will be enforced against you.
සියලුම නිලධාරීන්ට නීතිය හමුවේ අධිකරණය හමුවේ උත්තර බඳින්න සිද්ධ වෙනවා කියන එක මම මේ අවස්ථාවේ ප්‍රකාශ කරනවා.
A meeting organized by the Jatika Jana Balavegaya was held in Ratnapura today.
Ranil Wickremesinghe is trying to violate the constitution and all the laws in the country and sabotage this election. Why is he trying to do this? He has no mandate of the people. If he is a true president, he needs the favor of the people. That is why he is called the president. But if he cannot come before the people and acting based on his own whims and fancies, if he is taking decisions prioritizing his own interests, then he is called a dictator. Ranil Wickremesinghe is not a president, but he is a dictator. He told Ganga Niliyanage not to print ballot papers until they release the funds. Then he told the secretary to the treasury not to release funds. What is this? Is this the law? Is this democracy? Is this the constitution? Is this the sovereignty of the people?
In a statement, the Church of Ceylon highlights that the decision by the government to withhold funding for the local government election is an unreasonable and arbitrary course of action which will have far-reaching consequences. The statement was signed by Bishop of Colombo and presiding Bishop of the Church of Ceylon, Right Reverend Dushantha Rodrigo, and Vicar General Diocese of Kurunegala, Right Reverend Kirti Siri Fernando. The statement goes on to note, quote, the government, which sponsored a tamasha at state expense on account of Independence Day nearly a fortnight ago, has no moral right to withhold funding of an election, unquote. It adds, quote, it has been nearly a year since the government announced its decision to default on external creditors. Any government which claims that it is unable to fund an election even after defaulting on its obligations to the outside world has no legitimate authority to continue in office, unquote. The Church of Ceylon calls on the government to take immediate measures to provide the resources to the Election Commission and other state agencies to hold free and fair elections as provided for in the budget that was passed in Parliament.
News First with the people.
A criminal linked to multiple crimes was killed in police fire on Thursday morning in Katunayaka. Sri Lanka police said that a criminal identified as Dinesh Buddhika was killed in police fire on Thursday morning in Madhuwa, Katunayaka. Police spokesperson SSP Nihal Thalduwa told News First that the deceased suspect attempted to throw a bomb at police officers and the officers had opened fire. It was reported that police officers were searching for a firearm that was used to commit a crime, and it was at that moment that the suspect had attempted to throw the bomb at the police officers. Sri Lanka police said that the deceased suspect was wanted for homicides, extortion and other crimes. Moving on in more news from Parliament, Parliamentarian Mayantha Dissanayake was appointed as the chairman of the Committee on Public Finance instead of Parliamentarian Dr. Harsha De Silva. The appointment was based on the proposal made by the government.
Parliamentarian Dr. Harsha De Silva was performing exceptionally well at the Committee on Public Finance, and after the President prorogued Parliament, the committees had to be reappointed. While the opposition proposed Parliamentarian Dr. Harsha De Silva, the government nominated and approved opposition Parliamentarian Mayantha Dissanayake.
Instead of listening to the opposition, you have arbitrarily used your powers and appointed Mayantha Dissanayake as the chairman of the Committee on Public Finance. There is no issue with who was appointed here. This is a misuse of the powers of the government. The standing orders state that this position must be given to a member of the opposition. Why are you doing this? I have no issue with this. If I was sent off, I will leave. But the country should know that we did this in good faith. If this is good for the country, then it's fine. I have no personal issue with it. I do not want any of these posts. Although we were offered cabinet positions, we did not accept them. But if this is what the government wants, and if Ranil Wickremesinghe does not want our input, tell us directly and let's see what happens. We are sending a different message to the international community at a time like this. We should refrain from doing this. That is my position.
As
the opposition representative at the Committee on Public Finance, he made many revelations and fixed them. The government is doing this because they cannot bear to watch this anymore. Therefore, please speak to the Speaker and appoint him as the main representative of the opposition.
ඉතා පැහැදිලිවම එක නමයි යෝජනා කරේ. ඒ තමයි ආචාර්ය හර්ෂ ද සිල්වා මැතිතුමාව.
I know that MP Harsha must be heartbroken, but it is a member of the opposition that was appointed and not us. We did not appoint anyone from the government. Is the person appointed not from the opposition?
විපක්ෂයේ මන්ත්‍රීවරයෙක්ව යෝජනා කරන්න ඕනේ ආණ්ඩු පක්ෂය නෙමෙයි. විපක්ෂය යෝජනා කරන්න. බලන්නකො ස්ථාවර නියෝග කියවන්නකො.
Look at the standing orders. The standing order does not specify opposition and government. The standing order only provides for the committee to be appointed.
මොන විකාරයක්ද මේක?
What kind of a joke is this? The nomination must be made by the opposition and not a name from the government.
යෝජනා කරනවක් මොනවටද? බහුතරයක් කැමැත්ත තියෙන කෙනාමයි පත් උනේ.
Chief Opposition Whip Lakshman Kiriyalla spoke about the appointment of Mayantha Dissanayake as the chairman of the Committee on Public Finance.
They used their majority and nominated him. I asked the speaker if Mayantha had contested to this. He said that he had contacted him over the phone and got his consent. Afterwards, I called Mayantha and told him that we are proposing the name of Harsha as the party. The speaker said that you had contested to this.
Member of Parliament Field Marshal Sarath Fonseca attended a dialogue organised by the Samagi Tharuna Balawegaya, which was held under the theme Let's Move Forward.
දැන් පාස්කු ප්‍රහාරයේ බින්දිතව තවත් දුක් විඳිනවා. කිසිදු සාධාරණයක් කිසිම අවස්ථාවක සිද්ධ වෙලා නැහැ. මෙවැනි ප්‍රහාරයක් ඉදිරියට ආවොත් ඔබතුමාලා කොහොමද වළක්වා ගන්නේ?
If the security forces are strengthened, the corrupt political system in our country will shake a little. They like to politicize the military, to include their supporters and make the military even more weak. Now you all can clearly see the present situation. They want a military that attacks the public and arrests them for no reason. There's a big loophole in this system.
Mali was brought to the island on Wednesday.
The mortal remain military parade. At the Colombo International Airport, the UN flag-draped coffin was symbolically delivered by Lieutenant Colonel HMWR Herat, Supply and Transport Officer of Mali-based 4th Combat Convoy Company, to Major General Hirosha Vanigasekara, Colonel Commandant of the Sri Lanka Army Service Corps and Master General Ordnance, who represented the commander of the army. The ceremonial parade afterwards handed over the UN flag back to Lieutenant Colonel HMWR Herat, symbolizing the formal acceptance of the remains by the troop contributing country. Troops, in accordance with laid down procedures, draped the coffin in the national flag and formally confirmed the acceptance of it by the TCC. Remains were afterwards taken to the Negombo Hospital. The military funeral of late UN peacekeeper Lance Corporal MJL Deshapriya is scheduled to take place at his respective hometown in Varakapola.
US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is urging other leading economies to move faster in resolving debt crises that threaten a growing number of countries. Yellen made the comments in a meeting on Thursday with India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman on the sidelines of a meeting of financial leaders of the Group of 20 major economies. The Treasury Department said this in a statement. The G20 or Group of 20 is an intergovernmental forum comprising of 19 countries in the European Union. It works to address major issues related to the global economy such as international financial stability, climate change mitigation and sustainable development.
US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen and other officials earlier indicated they will also be discussing risks of heavy debt burdens for many countries after costly efforts to cushion the worst impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. Those woes have deepened as countries' import bills surged due to sustained higher prices for food, oil and fertilizers and weakening currencies. But a slew of other countries from Laos and Afghanistan to Venezuela and Argentina have seen their finances deteriorate in the past year. China has expressed support for Sri Lanka but has not said if it will help reduce a multi-billion-dollar debt that has left the Indian Ocean nation in financial and political turmoil. One of Sri Lanka's biggest creditors after extending its loans to build a port and other facilities, Beijing has offered a 2-year suspension of repayments but balked at reducing the amount owed. The International Monetary Fund has set a reduction in debt as a condition for an emergency loan. The first G20 finance ministers and central bank governors meeting under the G20 Indian presidency on the 24th and 25th of February will see the participation of finance ministers and central bank governors of the G20 members, invitee members and heads of international organizations. In total, there will be 72 delegations attending the meeting. The remarks come as Bloomberg reported that the International Monetary Fund is considering approving Sri Lanka's bailout even without the formal assurance of debt restructuring support from China, citing people familiar with the discussions. In response, Wang Wenbin, spokesperson for the Chinese Foreign Ministry, told a press conference on Monday that China has already provided Sri Lanka with a letter supporting the sustainability of Sri Lanka's debt, expressing its willingness to extend the debt due in 2022 and 2023.
The inaugural ceremony of the International Conference on Developmentalism versus South Asian Societies was held at the University of Kelaniya earlier today.
The International Conference on Developmentalism versus South Asian Societies is organized by the Faculty of Social Sciences of the University of Kelaniya jointly with the Maharashtra Bhugola Vidya Association, Solapur University of India, Pangaea Geographical Association of India and India Sri Lanka Association of Geographers. Academics, diplomats and government officials, including the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Kelaniya, Professor Nilanthi De Silva, Vice-Chancellor of the Solapur University in India, Dr. Muralini Fadnavis, and Vice-Chairman of the University Grants Commission, Senior Professor Chandanapree Udavatta, participated in the event.
Though national statistics may show a great deal of progress in terms of economic development, often there are communities that are left behind in pockets of poverty and deprivation. Politicians and policymakers often view development only in terms of what can be reduced to financial measures. It is no doubt important, as all of us Sri Lankans can attest, given our recent economic turmoil, but I am firmly of the view that societal well-being does not always go hand in hand with economic development.
The conference aims to build academic cooperations, explore opportunities, conduct collaborative research and promote cultural relations among South Asian academic communities. High Commissioner of India in Sri Lanka, Gopal Bagle, was the chief guest of the event.
We also have the program where we are looking at bringing global brands from India like IITs in partnership with Sri Lankan institutions. This is the reason, ladies and gentlemen, that when the need arose, India did not hesitate or step back, but indeed came forward last year with a help last year itself of about $4 billion. This year, as you would know, India was the first country to extend in writing to IMF the required financing assurance, which should have opened the way for the loan from IMF to Sri Lanka. Our approach is to focus on investment, in bringing more investment from India into Sri Lanka so that both our countries can prosper together. And in the areas, this investment in the areas of requirement of Sri Lanka, of Sri Lanka's priorities, such as renewable energy, infrastructure, education, health and pharmaceuticals.
Memorandums of understanding regarding student, academics and field research were exchanged between the University of Kelaniya and the Solapur University of India during the event. Representative and Country Director of the UN World Food Programme Sri Lanka, Abdul Rahim Siddiqui, delivered the keynote address. Following the inaugural ceremony, Emeritus Professor N.K. Dangalla of the Department of Geography at the University of Kelaniya expressed the following views at the first session of the conference.
We are, discussing the welfare of the man actually, not the world or the other living beings. In the development discourse, man is at the center. We are seeking the welfare of man at the expense of the sustenance of the biophysical world. Even in a sustainable development paradigm, we envisage austerity and rational use of resources for the benefit of future generations, future human generations. But with all this emphasis, we have not been successful ensuring the well-being of the people.
Siobhan Daniel of the Gum at the Movement also spoke at the event.
When we think about development, when we think about the well-being of societies, the first thing we have to understand is, where do we begin? You have to begin by understanding reality, the truth, assessing the fact. Secondly, you must appreciate the fact that we already have a philosophy of sustainable leadership in this country. It is how we have existed for thousands of years. South Asia is one of the most ancient parts or regions in the entire world. And our histories and archaeologies are still being discovered. And so what we don't know is a lot more than what we know. But what we do know is enough for us to understand the need to meld, to marry these two worlds together, because the challenges that we are bound to face in the years to come can either make or break us. It's up to us today to take that call.
International Conference on Developmentalism versus South Asian Societies will be held until the 26th of February.
The Regiment Special Forces of the Sri Lanka Air Force operates in small units to neutralize the enemy. Tonight, we take a look at the RSF jungle warfare.
Sri Lankan Sky Warriors.
3,000 and back off.
The Regiment Special Forces of the Sri Lanka Air Force is tasked with protecting a landmass of 65,610 square kilometers and the country's airspace, and therefore they are always on alert. The Regiment Special Forces of the Sri Lanka Air Force operates in small groups and is well trained in jungle operations. The RSF breaches enemy lines strategically and under the cover of natural elements without giving their position away to carry out unexpected attacks and neutralize the enemy. Not only are they geared for airborne operations, the RSF is trained at the Morobaba Training School in waterborne operations as well. These small elite groups dive to places that cannot be reached by air or land and are skilled in handling their weapons while in water. The Regiment Special Forces of the Sri Lanka Air Force put the safety of the citizens of Sri Lanka at the top of the list of priorities. Quickly responding to disasters, the RSF have rescued a countless amount of lives who live to tell the tale of how they were given a second chance at life.
Sri Lankan Sky Warriors.
That's a wrap of Primetime News on TV1 for tonight. Thank you very much for watching. Take care and God bless.